Isaac, welcome back to the fight. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Living the dream. As we speak, I got my video guy Logan here doing some stuff, setting some things up for some shoots we're doing after this. I've got my outdoor living company is fixing my front yard water feature. I've got the guy coming to repair my grill in a 2-hour window here today. I got a lot going on, man. I had my weed people out this morning. Like, it's spring, man.
Yeah, you got the important stuff happening if you got the grill.
That's right. Apparently I had it too hot and it burned the starter, so I screwed it up because I think I turned it on and then I walked away for a while and I came while it was heating up and I damaged it. It's on me. Everything's our fault, right? Like we were talking before we hit record here. So, yeah, to catch you guys up, we were just talking about business and growth and this and that. And I said we had some hiccups now and then in the fight, and they can all be traced back to me. So,
it's always leadership, man.
It is, and it's
for better or for worse.
Yeah. So what man? It's been probably a couple of years since you were on, at least I think, and. What's going on with you and Busybusy, man? Fill us in.
It's been going fantastic. The last couple of years have been probably some of our best years. Even since COVID, we've probably done best since then. And I think a lot of that's because a lot more people got familiar with doing web conferencing. Mm-hmm. So it allowed us to communicate with contractors better because a lot of them just kind of got online starting to do web conferencing. So I think that helped us a lot.
Yeah.
But we've always been growing steady, but since 2020, we've really kind of taken off and grown a lot more aggressively, a lot faster. We've been growing rapidly right now. We have about 70,000 users across the US and Canada and Australia, and it looks like a little Verizon map. So it's all spread out across the nation. And there's no state or area that we don't have users in, which is pretty fantastic. And so then we're just growing all those bases, and it's working really great. And our retention is good, so our customers seem to be pretty happy. Our retention's in top tier category. And then overall, we've just continued to expand our ecosystem of services we're offering contractors. So in addition to the timekeeping, we now have the scheduling and daily reports, and we're offering payroll, and we're even offering a benefits program where they get more of an affordable. We've partnered with a company that's doing benefits that allow them to do medical, dental, et cetera, and also HSA stuff that's got a unique nuance on it for the construction industry. So we're doing that, and then just continuing to solve problems. Just letting our customers take us different directions as far as what we're focusing on, and it's going really good. It's going great.
That's all business is, right? Solving problems. I mean, if you just boil it down, it's that somewhat old friend and mentor and really successful business owner that I know used to say that all the time. Like every time he got on stage, he's like, "We're just here to solve problems," So it's. So I want to talk about some things that are going on in the world here a little bit. The feeling in the air. But before we do that, I'm curious. We always talk about being successful as a contractor, right?
Okay.
How would you define that?
Being successful as a contractor. Well, if you wanted me to give it in one simple statement, I would say you've got your shit in order.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But to clarify that a little bit, obviously we've talked a lot about profit. We've talked a lot about different things. But in my opinion, it's if you have your systems and your culture in order. I think those are your two pillars to success. You have your systems and culture. Your systems should be helping you manage your profits, so your profits in order. But even if you have your systems dialed in, but you suck at your culture, you're not doing good at your culture, I don't think you're successful yet. I think you have to have both of those pillars.
Yeah.
And culture would be, in my definition, it's how you're making people feel. Are people proud and excited to work for you, or is it just a job till they find a better opportunity?
Yeah, we get asked a lot in the fight, how do I build my team? And one of my default answers is usually something around build the type of place somebody would want to be a part of, be the type of person somebody would want to be around.
That's right.
And and I know there's strategies and tactics to recruit and all those other things, but I think it, like you talked about culture, it's just how do people feel when they interact with you? How do they feel when they show up each day? You know, I've, you know, through the years made some mistakes. I made assumptions of how people felt, and I didn't have conversations, and I didn't, you know, just quite frankly, just didn't do my job very well. Right. So, and I think the more you grow, the harder it is to rope it in. So I always encourage the newer guys to be thinking about that from day one, you know, or day 385 or whatever they're on. And so, yeah, I was just curious how you would answer what it means to be a successful contractor. So there's a, now let me just say this. I choose, and I know Isaac, you're the same way. We choose not to participate in a lot of the crap that goes on in the world, right? It doesn't mean things aren't happening. Doesn't mean there's not inflation. Doesn't mean there's, because those things are happening. But we all have a choice on how we show up, and how we view these things. So I want to just throw that out there for people, that this is not a conversation of doom and gloom we're about to have. But you know, I choose not to participate in that. I choose to participate, or to focus on the things I personally have control over. We have control over as a company. But that being said, there's still a lot of fear in the air.
Yes,
you know,
there is.
And you turn on any news channel and it's doom and gloom, and which is funny, because I was talking to my CEO Neil the other day. I said, I don't see it, man, because I drive around Colorado Springs here, and I see 10, 12 new apartment complexes going up. I see new homes going up all over the place. You know, so I think the trades are solid right now, man. And like, if you've been paying attention, you've been working on your business and dialing in, like you were talking about, systems and culture and your numbers and working on you, it's pretty hard to not succeed right now. But so this term gets thrown around, like how to handle uncertain times. Like, how do you define uncertain times? Let's start there.
Okay.
Because I know you've been through some things through the years.
I have.
And
Well, yeah, if you look back to, you know, anybody that's got a little bit of age on them, you know, I'm only 45, but if you've got a little bit of age on you, you remember 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really tough time. And the uncertainty, the problem was, at least in my world, was when the banks started pulling funding, then the projects weren't getting funded, and therefore everybody brought them to a halt, right?
Yeah.
And so we stopped most work. You know, a lot of people were laid off. There was a lot of challenges that happened. That sounds pretty bad, and it was, and it felt pretty bad. Okay, but if you look at the analytics on it, about 50% of people continued to work. 50, maybe more. I think it might have even been closer in the 60 range. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is, when you look at yourself as an organization, are you in the top 50%? Are you in the top 60%? You know, because like you said, if you're battening down your hatches, if you're keeping your business, your ship in order, the times will be tough, but you'll survive them. Yeah. You know, you'll survive them. There's been many downturns that we've gone through that a lot of us didn't even, you know, for lack of a better, I'm pointing to myself here, okay, not anybody else, but for lack of a better phrase, I wasn't smart enough to know we were in a downturn. You know, I was working hard and just working through it, and it's just dealing with the problems that come at you day to day and handling them and working through them. And sometimes prices were high, sometimes prices were low. But to me, the key is, when you're in uncertain times, is knowing your stuff. Like we've talked about before, if I have a certain margin, let's say I have a 25% margin on the work I do, or, you know, I know you advocate for certain margins.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, it's been too long for me to remember the exact margins you tell people.
It's 50, but that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you want to use for your example is cool.
And 50 is, you know, let's say that's gross margin, and then let's say when I say 25%, I'm saying net, like you end up with 25% profit, okay? If you know what those margins are, then you know what your flexibility is if times get tight. You know where you can flex, you know how you can go. The dangerous thing is when you don't know those numbers and you just start letting the circumstances around you dictate your life, and people say, well, this is all the money there is in it, and you say, well, I guess I'll take that because that's all there is.
Right.
And so you don't quite comprehend the consequences. If you're going to take a project and you're going to lose money on it, you should at least know that and be able to admit that you're going to do that, and know it up front. And I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying you should at very least know your numbers well enough that you are making conscious decisions. I don't ever advocate any environment where people say, oh, things just happen to me. I think you should be controlling your environment, whatever the situation is. I don't care if it is a downturn. You should be in control.
Yeah, and math scares a lot of contractors, right? Like they have a lot of confusion around what it means to know their numbers, and I think the key is, what I love what you said a minute ago is, during the last time you kind of weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Which is I think good in some ways, that you weren't paying attention to the noise and
the fear.
And the fear, and because the reality is, just like you said, 50% of the people were working. There's also always a number of people, clients, right? Prospects, whatever you want to call it, that they're doing stuff. They're always going to spend money no matter what's going on in the economy. And so I think, telling yourself a different story, that, man, there's plenty of people out there that would hire us at our rates. Yeah. I actually found during the 2008 thing we weathered through, not that we're going to go into a deep dive on math and break even and all that stuff right now, but we got through it because we raised our prices.
Nice.
And because I just figured we have less at bats, residential painting at the time, so it was like we had less leads coming in. So that meant we had less project. If we're selling, just call it 50% of the leads, right? If you're selling 50% of the leads and you're used to 10 leads a week, now you got 5, you have less jobs to recover your break even and not go negative, right? And so our whole goal through the 2008 thing was just to get through it without going into debt. We just wanted to live, just stay alive, and we did, and we actually made money, with that.
Awesome.
So we were only able to do that because we understood our numbers, we understood what it took to break even and stuff. So, what? I know you've been through the ringer in business. I know there was an article recently in January about you out there that I saw online a couple days ago, where you had a choice to make between paying credit cards and paying the mortgage, right? And then it became mortgage and food and stuff like that. What are some lessons from all that you've taken with you and brought to now that have made you stronger now to be able to handle anything?
That's a deep question and a good question. So in that particular case, I was in the excavation industry. Okay, This was 2008, and the mistake we made is we'd paid all of our equipment down. So I had a couple $1 million in equity equipment. I'd paid them off about 90%. And when the work all dried up in the area that we were in entirely, and we still had payments on these pieces of equipment, we end up having to let them go back to the bank for the 10 cents on the dollar we'd paid them down to. So because we'd paid them down and not paid them off, I realized like today in our business, we try to keep 75% of our equipment paid for, and we only leverage about 25%, so we keep their, a ratio of paid for assets versus assets that are not paid for. And one of my friends said it best, which is, hey, if I'm going to go broke, I'm going to do it at home drinking a beer, not going out paying people money to work on their job sites.
Right.
And so we try now, one of the lessons learned is we try now to always have a certain amount of rainy day fund, or ability to manage yourself through a storm where you don't make any panic decisions. Like in that case, it wasn't even our decision, but here we had all this work booked. We had $9 million worth of work booked for the next year, and all of a sudden it was all gone just overnight. And so at the time, our payments that we had were reasonable based on our work, but when our work shifted, these payments were no longer reasonable, and we weren't able to handle them. And so we lost everything kind of really in short time. And I guess the point to that is kind of like many other things. If we could have just parked those assets and let them sit, they regained their value later. They
Yeah.
came back, we just needed to not have payments on every one of them so that it put us in a compromised position. So from then till now, I make sure I have a balance of things paid for versus leverage.
Yeah.
And so even though people say, hey, you should be leveraged to the hilt, I'm a little more conservative than that. I try to put a balance. I don't pay for everything, but I also don't leverage everything.
I like that. What are some of the maybe mental lessons or advice you have for somebody who might be listening to the news too much right now, and maybe they're feeling some of the reality here and there, right? Let's acknowledge that. How do you approach times like this mentally?
That's a great question. I would say the first thing is you've got to be careful not to listen to fear too much, because fear is not profitable. It's like, for example, one advisor, and I'm forgetting the book that said this. They said, pay a little bit of attention to your competition, but not too much attention.
Yeah.
Because if you pay too much attention to your competition, you're always worried about what they're doing rather than worried about what you're doing. And there was a great example of this in one of the Olympic swimming meets, where the one swimmer is looking at the other swimmer, and the winner is focused on the goal.
Yeah.
And the guy who didn't win is looking at the guy that's focused on the goal. And so I think you need to be aware of your surroundings and you need to be aware of what's happening. But I think your focus needs to stay on winning and not to be focused on fear, because most of the time, if you'll step back, even in today's world, and look at it and say, okay, let's say the worst thing happens that you can imagine. What actions should I take different in my business life? And really boil it down to, what are the things I can or can't do about this situation? Acknowledge what you can do and what you can't do, and focus, on doing the things you can do to be more successful. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. You need to not pay too much attention to things that you have no ability to impact.
Well, it's true for a reason, because it works.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why there's certain cliches too, because they're true.
Yeah.
And and if I recall that swim meet, I think the guy who was looking at his competitor only lost by a few tenths, like a couple tenths of a second. Like, it was such a narrow margin of error or victory, right?
You're exactly right. It may, you wonder if he could have won if he had stayed focused on the goal rather than focused on his competitor.
Yeah.
And sometimes fear is your competitor. I mean, it's just fear. You, like, I don't know. Like, I'll give you a bit of encouragement for your listeners, because so I do two things now. I do Busybusy, and I'm also managing a large development project that does apartment housing and all this kind of stuff. Okay. And I can tell you, from a perspective of the developer point of view for the apartment housing, it's not a terrible time to build. Okay. The interest rates are high, but what was worse than high interest rates? Escalating prices that were escalating month over month and year over year that we couldn't predict. And so when things are kind of stabilizing, and at least we can now predict what we're doing, we're not feeling like pulling back on building. We're feeling like moving forward on building. We're feeling like moving forward on construction, because there's still a housing demand. People still need to live there. And you got to maybe shift the way you're thinking a little bit. Maybe everybody's not going to get their big dream house mansion, but people still need places to live. And so maybe you're going to build some things that are a little more efficient, a little more effective. And I would rather pay a 7% interest rate today than be told that my construction costs are going up 12% a year at minimum, which is what the contractor told me in 2020 or 2021. He's like, no, your $180 million apartment building is going up 12% a year. I would rather know what my cost is right now and be able to plan and deal with that. And so I feel more like building today than I did in 2021.
Wow, that's interesting. I like that. That's a great perspective on that too. What opportunities do you see right now? for the average contractor out there that, that's slinging away, who might need a mindset shift, right? Like a different like just a different perspective. Like, because some people are like, oh, this is the worst time to start a business, or you got to be conservative, or whatever it is. Like,
it's the best time. I think the opportunities are massive. So personally, similar to what you said you did in 08, how you got more money out there. Mm-hmm. Right now is the time to build your business. It's the time to get your business in order and build your systems, processes, and culture. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're out there and you're a contractor, and let's say you're a good contractor, which I believe, of course, most of your audience is, because they wouldn't be listening to you if they weren't trying to make themselves better. So that immediately puts them in a category if they're trying to improve, right? Mm-hmm. You are in a market where if you will build your systems and culture properly, you can gather up the top talent, you can gather up the A players, you can become the company you've always wanted to be, and you've got a better opportunity to do that than you've ever had. Because in the game that's existed in the last couple of years, where there's just tons of money out there and everybody's just running so fast that they're in chaos, it's not as clear who the really great contractors are and who the ones that are not so great are. Mm-hmm. But today it's starting to become more clear. So today is the day to define yourself. It's to improve your systems, your culture, gather up your A players, really define yourself as an organization, and make sure that, in essence, you are now at the point where almost by force, you need to work on your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like with salespeople. We'll just use the salespeople example. In good times, everyone's a hero, right?
Yeah.
And it's the challenging times that you really determine if you're an order taker or if you're a really good salesperson, right? And,
that's right.
And what you've built, the pipeline you've built, the prospecting you've done, all those relationships that you build, your sales skills, the actual skills of selling jobs or projects, all those have a bigger light shined on them. And I read this. This isn't my terminology. I've stolen it, and I know other people use it too. I just want to be clear. That what I find is, in a time like this, you learn if your sales team or you as a salesperson are a rainmaker or a rain barrel.
Yeah.
The rain barrel's got its mouth open to the sky going, rain in my mouth, and the rainmaker's going out there and creating the weather. And so it's just that different. So back to what you said about opportunities, I think because most people don't know how to handle a time like this, because they buy into all the BS that's out there, they paralyze themselves. They don't take the action. They don't stay consistent. They focus more. You talked about the swimmers and the competitors. They focus more on the other things around them and next to them instead of where they want to go. And so again, if you got 100 contractors that compete against you in your area, just for easy math, I don't know. I would guess that 90 of them are taking their foot off the gas.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. I
with
agree with you.
And playing scared and not stepping on the gas and being on the attack.
It's a great time to pull ahead. And you and I have talked about these A players before, but sometimes, in these severe labor markets where you can't hardly hire someone like we've had, people complain all day long, man. We make tons of mistakes. We lose tons of profit because we screw shit up all the time. Right now is your time to make money, like gather up the right people, make good money, do stuff right. We all know this. I mean, those of us who have experience, we all know if you get the right people on the job, you're going to make the most money kind of in any market. And because these tight markets almost force that situation, sometimes you can make more money because you're producing at a high rate and you're not screwing shit up and you're no longer complaining about all the guys you got to babysit because they're not doing too well. Get your A players gathered up. This is the time, and create a family, create a culture.
Yeah. So speaking of, because I've been taking some notes through this I want to come back to, you've mentioned culture a few times.
Yeah.
How are you communicating with your company right now? What are they hearing from you?
And to be clear, for Busybusy is what you're referring to?
Yeah, or any company. I know you get your hands on a lot of things. Just as a leader, what's coming out of your mouth right now? Because we all know our people are probably consuming what's out there too.
Yeah.
And there's stories rolling around in their heads. So what's required of a leader in a time like this?
I think a leader always needs to be. So if you think of who you want as a leader, you just think of what would I want a leader to be.
Mm-hmm.
You want the leader to be conscious of what's happening. Okay, like you want to communicate that you're aware, just like you and I are talking. We're aware of what's happening. You want the leader to be conscious of what's happening, but you also want to know that they're not full of fear and that they have a plan and that they're moving forward towards the plan and the goal. And that's the kind of leader I believe you should be. There's a lot of great movies that demonstrate this. There's a lot of great, books that talk about this. But as a leader, you need to make sure you're instilling confidence in your team, because you can be the prophet that's self-fulfilling. You can self-fulfill the prophecy. Like if you're going to communicate fear and chaos and talk about the sky is falling, it's probably going to fall. You're probably going to fall.
Yeah.
But if you can communicate that you understand the things that are going on, and here's how you're adjusting and dealing with the environment, and here's how the changing environment creates opportunities, and here's how we're managing those opportunities, you can put that confidence in your team and allow them to really feel like they've hitched their wagon to the right horse.
Yeah.
You want to make sure they know they're in the right place.
One of the chapters in my book, I talk about mastering the people game, and not that I've mastered it, but I think I'm okay, but a lot of room to grow. But one of the biggest fears that people have is the fear of an unclear future.
Yep.
And so as a leader, that puts it on us to make sure that basically that fear generates the need of clarity. And so an example, total, boots on the ground example, during the 2008 debacle, we had our weekly, crew leader meetings like we always did, but in those meetings, I started reporting on what we were doing that week for marketing. I started telling the crew leaders, like, hey, this is how many leads came in. This is what's going on. My partner at the time was talking about the production schedule and how many weeks or days or whatever we were booked out. And sometimes it was day to day, right? But it was, I think that kept the core of our group together, and then that message trickled down into the ranks, if you want to call it that, right? That because if we would have been quiet about it, even if we were still doing all those things, and I believe there's a lot of people who listen to this are doing a lot of the right things, that they're just not communicating to their team what's going on, and so then they're making up stories in their own heads, when they only see 3 or 4 weeks of work on the calendar, maybe they're starting to put an eye on the want ads and thinking about jumping ship or whatever it might be. So I just think there's
it's a great point.
We have to. And it's funny because, there's different personality types, and, if you go to the disc profile and all that stuff, how people are wired, sometimes I think I'm communicating clearly, and I'm not. And, so I've also learned to go, hey, is this, I'm going to butcher how I say it, but like, hey, is this meeting your needs? Like, are you getting enough information from me? Are you, because sometimes people, not sometimes, people just want that security. They want, and when they hear you show up on a regular basis as a leader saying, hey, this is the stuff I'm putting on my back and that we're doing and we're implementing and tweaks that we're making, and that builds the confidence that they have in you. And that's uncommon in the trades, right? The general trades world. So
it is. It's very uncommon in the trades. I know you and I have talked about this before, and I don't want to sound negative towards the trades, but anyone who is actually making an actual attempt to work on their business and improve their business usually stands out quite a bit, because they're making a conscious attempt to do more than working in their business, but to work on their business. And to me, I love your point that you need to communicate what you're doing. To me, if you're doing that, if you're being the leader that is working on these things and is constantly saying, okay, what can I do better? And if you learn that you're not communicating well with your team from this podcast today, that's great. Now you add that to the things you need to do better, and you start working on it. If you are making those active efforts to try to make your company better, you're probably going to stand out.
Yeah, and I would flip it too. I would encourage people to lean on your team and don't feel like you got to figure out everything by yourself. Because I'm just thinking back, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to, like I said, we raised our prices, but we also looked, it wasn't just a pricing thing. We were going, how can we be more efficient in the field? And so from time to time, we'd get our team together and just go, hey, guy, we took our crew leaders and just said, a 6-panel door, and we were painting, right? 6-panel door, 2 coats, no crazy prep or nothing. You guys figure out how we could shave off 10 minutes a door.
Yeah.
Like we would just give them a challenge and we would leave the room for 20, 30 minutes and come back and they'd figure out the problem. All right. And so I also want to encourage people, like, that's good leadership too, you guys, is it gives them a chance to not just check their brain at the door when they come in each day, but, I have one friend who, gargantuan company, and he was telling me the lowest guy in the totem pole, some apprentice guy, came up with some crazy idea in a company meeting. They ended up implementing it and they made him like 3% more efficient. And as you know, that adds up. That's like real money.
Money.
And it's money they made without having to go out and get new customers, because it was just sitting right there under their nose. And I don't know, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I mean, how much more revenue, how much more profit, percentage of profit, do you think is right under our noses in the average business?
For the construction industry?
Yeah.
25%. And I mean that on a net level.
On a net level. So you got $100,000 in net on the month, and you're saying there's another $25,000 there.
No, let me
or did
be
I
more
butcher
clear.
the math? Did I butcher that?
No, it's just I might have not said it right.
Okay.
I'm saying if you do $100,000 a month, that there's $25,000 net profit available.
Okay.
So net $25,000, 25% net profit available based on your revenue. And I believe that of every industry. I mean, not of every industry, I'm sorry, every trade within the industry. I believe that we have about 25%. As far as the increase, typically we see, I mean, you can tell me better, you better can tell me the percentage you're seeing, but I'm saying on a net level, it seems to wander between 5 to 10%, maybe up to 15. And I'm saying it should be at least 25.
So net should be at least 25, just to be clear. And I love that number. So I want to do a thing here. Let's say you got a crew of 15 in the field, and all in labor burden and stuff, you're 40 an hour cost. That's 600 an hour times how many hours in a year?
2,000 roughly.
2,000. All right, we'll go 2,000. So you got 1.2 million. And this I'm going to the how to be more profitable. I'm not using your net thing here, but like, if you could be 5% more efficient in the field with the systems that you're talking about and this and that, 5%, I mean, that's another $60,000 in net profit.
That's right.
Just sitting there waiting for you on efficiencies.
Yes.
And how about that for a segue to have you talk about Busybusy?
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the softball.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was like a beach ball coming at you, and you got one of those big bats.
Yeah, it's so true though. And Busy, the average customer of ours that actually engages, and I say it like that because you can buy us and just use us for time tracking and not ever do anything with the data, right? But the average customer that engages increases their net profit by about 30%. And so let me give a comparison. If you were at 6% net profit, now you can get up to 9%, So they can usually increase their net profit by 30%. And that's just engaging them with us at a soft level. If you really if you dive into the analytics that you get out of Busy and work the system, we've seen contractors triple their profits using our system. And it's not because we're so great, right? All we're doing is helping them see the data, and then now they're taking this data and they're making decisions of how to fix their business. Like I'll give you one data point. Yeah. And you're probably well aware of this. I think the latest numbers I heard was between 32 and 37%. This is nationwide. They figure between 32 and 37% of the time, labor is not focused on revenue producing activities. Yeah. And so just imagine that you have people that, 2/3 of their time they're producing revenue for you. And if you added another third to that, or some percentage of that third to focus their revenue, how much more money they can make you. Because this is pure cash, because you're already paying their whole salary.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying their whole salary. You're paying all the time. And in our experience, the reason they're not focused on revenue producing activities is usually uncertain or unclear communication. Like, I love that you hit communication,
Mm-hmm.
because that's usually the key. Is most people want to, especially A players. You and I have talked about A players, but most people want to succeed. And so having very clearly communicated to them the things that they should be focused on and how to do them successfully so that they produce revenue for you, that alone can shift your net margin by tremendous amounts.
So how do we find some of these? How do we avoid the non-revenue activities? At first, what's some examples of non-revenue generating activities, and then what's a tip you can give to tweak it and flip it?
Okay, so if I've got a crew out there, my background's excavation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got all the machines parked and the guys are standing around looking at the plans, trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing next and what materials they need for it, what parts they need for it. One of the first things I did, that when I was back running an excavation crew, I was able to pull our margins up to 25% net profit on a job site. And so I was running the highest margin crews. And the way I did that was in our world, usually the boss would run the nicest machine and kind of manage the job from the machine. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because we say we can't afford to hire anybody else. So you got to run a machine, right?
Yeah.
So my nature is very analytical. So as I observed my environment and growing up in it, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is the best way. And so I put the next senior guy on the machine, and I started lining out the job and making sure that all decisions were made ahead of the crew, that all parts were gathered, that all things were in place so that the crew just stayed on a high level of throughput. Okay.
Yeah.
And just that, a conscious effort. And the comparison I would give it as a coach. I shifted myself from being a player to a coach on the project. And I just started making sure all things were in place to get the crew humming. And I also observed them and said, okay, what if you do this different? What if you do this different? And just continually kept their focus on revenue producing activities. And I did this back in my 20s more intuitively, rather than today. I've got the research and the data, but
Mm-hmm.
but our projects started coming in at 25% margins.
Yeah.
And so this is some of the key that we talk about at Busybusy, is sometimes you're making 25% on these projects, and then you're losing 20% on these projects over here. And as a company, you're making 5%. You say, great, we're doing good, but you don't know where you're winning or where you're losing. And then you decide to grow, and you end up growing in the losing area. And so you start losing money. Mm. But what you really need to do is get your profit dialed in and your systems dialed in, which I believe includes culture, because that's how you get the best players. And start gathering up that money that you're talking about that's sitting right in front of you, because it is there, and I believe the industry is full of it. It's just anybody who has experience that's observed construction knows this. Mm-hmm. There's so much opportunity for improvement.
In the carpenters will always tell you, measure twice, cut once.
Yes.
That's what I'm putting it in language that we speak here in the fight, right? So
yep.
Guys, what Isaac's talking about is pre-planning. Like
yep.
having a plan when you go into a job. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but like I'm thinking back, Isaac, to when I first hired a coach 20-something years ago.
Yep.
He taught us the importance of pre-planning projects, and we were doing about a 33% gross profit. And within 1 year, actually within like a couple months, but the next 12 months, rolling 12 months, we were averaging a 52% gross profit. And one of the things that we implemented was we got clearer on our scopes of work and expectations of man hours and some things like that. But the other big thing is, I mentioned earlier, we had weekly production meetings, and then we would hold, we would be accountable. You'd be accountable in front of your peers on how you brought the job in. But to make it all come together, we did pre-job visits, where and I know different trades do things differently. I'm just saying, like residential painting was mainly our thing. We would send the crew leader out with the scope of work for a 15 to 20 minute pre-job walk with the customer, walk through. They would kind of do their own takeoff, and they would start getting their mind on the job before the crew ever showed up. So he had a plan to start. Dude, that one thing jumped our gross profit immediately by 10%. Like right
that.
out of the gate. And so when we coach people in the fight, we're always in their ear going, guys, if you don't listen to anything else, just do that, because it's efficiencies waiting there for you. And it also creates a better experience for the customer. They feel like you have a plan when you walk in, and that you're not just winging it like the average contractor does when they show up and they invade your house with the team,
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it, Tom. The winging it and the confusion, I think, is the profit killers of our industry. Mm-hmm. They have confusion, they have chaos, and it just destroys profit. And if you do that thing, like you said, inject some mental clarity there. And I love that you put the crew leader's mind on it ahead of time, because then it gets him thinking about it. So now you're engaging the greatest resource on the planet, which is the human brain, So
yeah,
getting them to actually engage and think about their project. And you're right. You change that one thing, you'll change your profitability massively.
Well, like you said earlier, most people want to do good. Your people that show up every day, they're not showing up thinking how they can sabotage everything. They want to show up and they want to win, and they want to know how to win. And, they want to have a little control over their destiny and those types of things. And so again, a lot of good lessons here. So I wanted to talk a minute about, because it's been a couple years since you've been on. And we talked about Busybusy and all that stuff. What's new over there, man? Like I know you said you've got some things, you've made some tweaks and things like that over the years. What's new? What's coming? Where can we find you? All that stuff. I'd love for you to take a couple minutes to talk about that.
Yeah, so I'll try to just summarize it real quick, so your listeners know what Busybusy is. But Busybusy is focused on job site intelligence and job site communication. And I know that, saying job site intelligence might seem like a foreign way to say it, but basically all the data that comes from your job site, we're focused on helping you collect that data. And so we start with time tracking, because that's the one thing you must do so you can pay your payroll. So we help you track the time that your guys are spending and what project or task they're spending it on. So at the least level, how much time people have spent and what they've spent their work doing, so that you can compare that with your estimate and find out if you've estimated properly. And also having that insight starts helping you see what's going on. And there's a whole lot of nuances to that once you have that insight. But in addition to that, we give them the ability to do notes and photos, and even report. Some of the new stuff is report what they've accomplished, how much revenue producing activities they've accomplished in a day. We give them the ability to sign off, for safety and for non-injury, all the things in the field data. And then we give you the ability to consolidate that into a daily report. And so it can be consolidated in this nice PDF report that shows you what the weather was and what happened on the day, who was working, what got accomplished. And Busy automates all of that for you, because all your people can be each contributing their time and their notes and their photos and what they're doing. And Busy will pull it together as a crew and just give you an automated report for it. So it makes it super simple. And then in addition to that, we give you the ability to schedule your crews. So you can even schedule them, what they're doing, when they're supposed to be there. And if they hit according to their schedule, they don't even have to worry about assigning the project they're working on. They can just clock right into their schedule. I'm here, I'm doing it. And that's a lot of what we've been working on. And in addition to that, we are now giving you the ability to process payroll. We've teamed up with a great payroll provider so that people can process payroll through Busybusy. And also we are selling benefits for medical, dental, HSA type benefits that are really targeted for the construction industry, and they're more affordable. And in many ways, they're, depending on the state you're living in, they also help keep you in compliance. For like California, different states still have the ACA compliance. And so we give them affordable packages to keep them compliant. So overall, we're just continuing to go down that road of just helping contractors get their data and see where they're making money and where they're not making money, and try to help show them and make it more clear on the job site. And we call it job site intelligence because honestly, That's where we are. Like that's where the work is done in the construction industry, is on the job site. And that's the data that you want. And so on the lease level, it's time tracking. The affordability is pretty easy. And by the way, I'm missing, if my sales team was on here, they'd tell you I'm missing a few of these new features we've come out lately, but daily project reports has been a big thing. But anyway, we give them the ability, they can engage with the product either for free, which basically just replaces their paper time cards, or they can pay for it, which gives them all the data and all the stuff I've been talking about. We have a $10 a month per employee package or a $14 a month per employee package, depending on whether you want the pro level or the premium level. And so far, our retention is fantastic. Most of our customers that engage, they stay engaged, which is a good sign, and they make money. That's the big deal. Is on average, people that engage with Busybusy and use the product increase their profits by 30%. Some people do a lot better than that. Like we have some customers, they're paying us like $4,800 a year, and they increase their profit margin by $1 million a year, just using the system.
Yeah, in case anyone's confused, that's really good.
and it's not that Busybusy, made them $1 million more a year. I mean, what we did is we showed them their data, and so then they made decisions. And so it's really like any other tool. If you engage with it, you're going to make more money. Your ROI on Busy is amazing. You're going to make more money if you barely even think about it. But if you actually engage with it, you can make 100 times what you pay for using it.
Yeah, it's like any tool, right? If you don't use your hammer, it does you no good.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
You got to use it. And I know we've been a fan of yours a long time, man, because this is really needed. And what you've done is you've made it easy for people to really start to understand and know their numbers.
That's right.
Those things that are going to really move the net profit needle.
That's one of the biggest compliments we usually get, is that we've made it easy. Busybusy is made for contractors. I am a contractor, so we understand that when you're engaging with our app, you might be covered in dirt and grime.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you all probably hear my chihuahua barking right now. So there's because this is just what happens whenever I record. The dog decides to bark because a leaf blows by the house or something. So, anyone want a chihuahua? Anyone? Just email help@thecontractorfight. Guys, go to thecontractorfight.com/busy. If you're on our website, you go under resources. There's a link there too to check out Isaac's company and this and that. But Isaac, as we wrap up, man, what's the floor is yours, man. What you got? You got tens of thousands of contractors listening to you right now. What do you want to tell them? What's on your mind that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. So tens of thousands of contractors. Okay, well, we've talked about it, and I guess I'm just going to reiterate it. Today is the day to get your business in order. Like, literally, I can't say this enough. You should work on your business and get your systems and processes in order and your culture in order. If you would like help, we can help you. We set it up real easy. We even have people that will help you onboard and put these systems in order so they can help you, so it's not scary. But today is the day to get your systems in order, and then you're going to be more comfortable. And I've said this before, but also this is part of loving yourself. Like if you're in chaos, your brain is always in chaos. Yeah. If you put your systems in order, you'll chill out better. You'll be able to have that beer at the end of the day, you might say, and just know that things are in order. And so again, in today's times, I would just recommend that you get your stuff in order. There's no better time to do it. It'll give you a lot of confidence and a lot of surety, and you won't regret it, because it's the most important thing you can do. Our website's busybusy.com, busy.com. That's where you can find us. And of course, the Contractor Fight. If you come to our website directly, please let us know that you came through the Contractor Fight, or go to the Contractor Fight directly, because we have a special discount for you on going through the Contractor Fight. So we need to know that so we can take care of you that way. But yeah, don't be afraid. This is a great market to be in. You might make more profit now than ever if you have the right mentality.
100%, man. Well said. Well, as always, it's great chatting with you and picking your brain, and I always learn something whenever we connect, and man, I appreciate you being a part of the fight here today. And
thank you.
You got it, man. Guys, go to thecontractorfight.com/busy. Share this with another contractor. If you're an employee, share this with your boss and tell them to check out Busybusy. And just go, hey, boss, I got a way to make more money for you, man. And his ears will perk up. So, all right. With that, Isaac, appreciate you, man. You guys
Thanks,
rock.
man.
We got to roll. We're out.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure you click subscribe and share this with another contractor. I guarantee it's going to be helpful for them. And right now, somewhere on the screen, there's probably a thing that says watch the next Contractor Fight video. Go ahead and do that too. I'm out.